Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Welcome to Transition Radio.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Transition Radio Show. My name is Mark Angelo.
And I'm Lynna Ariel. We wanted to thank you for joining us this Tuesday evening as the world turns, right?
Yet another murder on Saturday.
Yeah.
And somebody else got shot today in Texas or yesterday.
In
Arizona.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up, to realize what this reality is all about. And that's why we here at Transition Radio Show try to bring you information so you could dive deep and understand the reality that you're living in. It's not exactly what you were taught in history class. It's not exactly what you were taught in Bible school. It's not exactly anything that you think should be.
I mean, we sort of get in the weeds with regards to what's really happening or what's really has happened in the past to us. And it's really eye-opening once you realize that things you thought were set in stone just aren't.
There aren't. So anyway, in part 5 of The Buried Empire, we strip away the art history, the cover story, to reveal the terrifying biological reality of the old world by examining the Greek profile on 18th century coinage, the suppressed Toulouse deformity skulls in French medical journals, and the Smithsonian systematic destruction of giant skeletons. They built a case for a pre-reset civilization that wasn't just culturally different, it was biologically superior.
That's pretty fascinating to think that instead of progressing, we're being sold this lie that we're not the cavemen.
No.
But as you will find out, it seems like we are the cavemen.
Yeah.
This investigation tracks the frequency war. When they told us to have our analog TV signals.
Oh yes, I remember that.
You were going
I was
to
like,
digital
why are they doing this?
Yeah, and then before that, they changed the frequency.
Of our music.
70s music used to be in the 432 hertz range, and now it's all in 440. We're going to find out why 440. So the frequency war that suffocated the giants prior to us, and the rise of the technician class, otherwise called the black nobility, who hijacked the grid and the modern frequency cage for 40 hertz. Fluoride, designed to keep the human stock disconnected from their heritage.
And they put that fluoride in our water. The dentist gives us fluoride treatment. I mean, just everything that we deal with is to dumb us down further and further. One of the things that I've started doing a lot is listening to different frequencies during my meditation and to help reconnect the things that they've disconnected in us. So I want everyone watching right now, I want you to stop whatever it is that you're doing. Put down the coffee, pause the chat. We need to do a little experiment. It's a physical experiment. I want you to take your index finger right now and place it directly between your eyes at the very top of your nose, right where the bridge meets the forehead. Press down, not hard, just enough to feel the bone. And I want you to really pay attention to that structure you feel under your skin. Lynna, are you doing this with me?
Yeah.
Okay. walk the audience through exactly what you're feeling right there at that bridge.
Okay, I'm doing it, Mark, and it's distinct. I feel that indentation. It's a dip. It's right where the frontal bone of the skull ends and the nasal bone begins. And it creates this little valley, that curve. But now that I'm touching it, I realize this is the structural definition of a human face.
Exactly. That dip is anatomically called the nasion, Nasion, in forensic anthropology. It is the crucial landmark. It is the structural barrier that separates our brain case from our respiratory system. It is a universal trait of Homo sapiens. It is literally what makes you look like a person and not a Neanderthal or something else. Now, I want you to keep that feeling in your mind, that dip, and I want you to consider an image of a Roman emperor. Consider a bust of Julius Caesar. Consider a painting of a medieval king. Or better yet, consider the face of liberty on a US dollar coin from the 1800s. If you look closely at their profiles, you will notice something that should terrify you.
You know, you look at the Statue of Liberty, even.
Yeah.
And
Look at one.
she's not a pretty woman.
No, not at all.
They didn't pick a model to be on there. Maybe this is why. Because those people in those paintings and statues, they don't have it. They literally...
It's telling me that's the device will restart to outside hours.
Yeah, outside hours. Outside hours.
In 3 minutes, though.
I don't know. I hope not.
I hope not, because then that'll mean...
maybe you'll have to turn off updates.
Let me
on
go.
The settings.
Give us a second here, folks. I don't know why it does that. Windows update.
Windows is its own
Yeah.
beast. So just turn off updates.
It says schedule restart.
For like the morning. Well, when we're off the air.
When we're off the air.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. It's like...
So yeah, these statues and images, they don't have it.
No, they don't. And they don't have that dip.
And it's true. When you consider those classical statues, they have a completely straight line running from the top of the hairline all the way to the tip of the nose. It looks like a vertical cliff face. There is no break in the bone, in the structure. It's startling once you notice it, because it really does look less like a person and more like, a different species entirely.
For 200 years, the universities, the art historians, the experts, they have gaslit us about this. They have told us, oh, that's just the Greek ideal. They claim the Greeks hated asymmetry, so they simply photoshopped their statues to look like gods. They tell us it was an artistic filter used to make people look noble. But here on Transition Radio, we don't buy that coincidence theory. We have spent the last year dismantling those official narratives. We have talked about the impossible buildings of Tartaria. We've covered the star forts that function as circuit boards. We've covered the mud flood that buried the first floors of our cities. We have established firmly that a superior civilization was here way before us.
And we proved that they had the technology. We proved that they had the free energy. But in all that research, Mark, we never asked the most terrifying question of all. We talked about the buildings, but we never talked about the tenants.
We never asked where the bodies went. If there was a civilization of giants or builders who constructed the Capitol buildings with doors that are 20 feet high, they must have physically existed, right? They must have had a biology. Did they look like us, or were we brought in later, a smaller, weaker stock to occupy their empty cities?
That's the question for today. We're investigating the biology of the builders. Did the people who built the old world physically resemble us? Or was the Greek profile actually a biological marker of a ruling caste that has been erased from history books?
Well, definitely. We're looking at genetics, bone density, and the suppressed history of the human form.
I have to say, Mark, digging into this, it's really actually quite disturbing. It completely changes how I walk through a museum.
Yeah.
Once you see this pattern, this specific facial structure in the statues, the coins, the paintings, you realize we might be looking at a crime scene. We might be looking at the memorial portraits of a species that was literally wiped out.
That's right. Let's drill down on this Greek profile. The textbooks call it idealization. They saw the artists were just flattering the kings, but think about that word, idealization. Usually when an artist idolizes a subject, what do? They smooth out a wrinkle, they fix a crooked tooth, they make the eyes a little brighter. They do not fundamentally alter the skeletal anatomy of the skull to look like a monster.
That's the key. If you take a modern human skull, your skull, my skull, and you fill in the nasion with bone to make it straight, well, the result isn't pretty. It's monstrous. You don't look noble. You look alien. You have a heavy protruding brow and a nose that looks like a beak.
So why did the ruling class from the pharaohs of Egypt to the kings of Persia, all the way to the Habsburg emperor of Europe, insist on being depicted with a specific non-human trait for 3,000 years? If it was just a style, why was it the only style allowed for the elite?
And we know the artists were capable of realism. That's the smoking gun. Consider the Habsburg jaw. We have portraits of Charles V and Philip IV of Spain. They had that massive deformed underbite. Science admits that was real. They admit it was a genetic defect caused by generations of incest.
Right. The historians consider the jaw and say, wow, consider that genetic deformity. The artist was so accurate. But then they look 2 inches higher at the nose on the same face and they say, oh, but that straight nose, that's just the style.
You can't have it both ways. If a painter was telling the truth about the ugly jaw, he was telling the truth about that alien nose. The Greek profile, that wasn't a beauty standard.
No.
It was a biological marker. It was the sign of the old blood.
A bloodline. The builders wanted to be recognized by their subjects, not disguised as them. They wanted the peasants to consider that profile and instinctively know that is not a man, that is a lord.
And with that, we bring to you our first vignette called The Painter.
Here we go.
Florence, 1504. The workshop of a master.
Maestro, I cannot get the likeness. The Duke, his face it fights the charcoal.
Show me.
I am trying to make him look noble, as you said. But the bone structure, it is too thick at the brow. If I paint it as I see it, he looks like a beast, Maestro. Like a statue come to life. Not a man of flesh.
Hand me the charcoal. You are painting him as if he were a baker or a priest. You are putting a dip in the nose.
But Maestro, that is how a face is made. The bone must break at the eye line.
Not his face. You fill the dip. You raise the bridge. You make the line straight, like a spear from the hairline to the tip.
Is it a style then? A fashion from Rome?
It is not a style, boy. It is a breed. Do not let them see you painting a man. Paint a king, or we will both lose our heads before the paint dries. He does not want to look like us. He wants to look like them.
Them?
The old ones, the ones who built the wall. Now paint. And do not break the line.
Do not break the line. That gives me chills, you know? It implies that the line, that straight profile, was a badge of authority. To break it was to insult the lineage.
And Mark, this is an ancient history. We aren't just talking about Florence 1500. We're talking about America. I want to talk about the coins in our pockets because the U.S. government was stamping this face on money until the 20th century.
Let's consider the evidence. The numismatic smoking gun. I want to talk about the 1793 flowing hair cent. This was the very first penny ever minted by the United States federal government.
We don't have an image of it, but if you wanted to look it up, you just type in 1793 flowing hair cent. So consider that face, right?
Yeah, consider that face. It is supposed to be the Lady Liberty. Lynna. Describe that for the audio listeners. Does that look like a woman you would see at the grocery store?
No, absolutely not. It looks ferocious. Her hair is wild, flying backward, like she's standing in a gale force wind. Her eyes are bugging out, but the profile, it's exactly what we're talking about. It's a solid wedge from the top of her forehead to the tip of her nose is a perfect 45-degree angle. There is no nasion. There is no humanity.
At the time, the newspapers hated it. I found an article from Philadelphia paper in 1793 calling it the frightened liberty and saying she looked like a madwoman. They asked why the mint would put such a savage face on the currency of a new republic.
But the engraver, Henry Voigt, wasn't an amateur. He was appointed by Washington. He was engraving what he was told to engrave. He was stamping the face of power on the new money.
And they kept it for 116 years. Consider the 1859 Indian head penny, same profile. Consider the 1880 silver dollar, same profile. The government minted billions of these images. They were programming the population to associate that specific spatial structure, the giant structure, with value, with God, with the state.
But then the timeline breaks. And this is the most critical date in our theory, 1909.
1909, the year the old world officially ended. The U.S. Mint released the Lincoln Cent. It was the first time in America history that a real historical human being was put on a circulating coin.
And we all remember that coin.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you just have a penny in your pocket, you'll see Lincoln.
Yeah, consider Lincoln. He's bumpy, he's ugly, he has warts, and most importantly, he has a deep, jagged nation. He has that dip. He looks like a mortal man.
The official story is that Teddy Roosevelt wanted to honor the common man for Lincoln's 100th birthday. But looking at it now, it feels like a regime change. It feels like, when a new king conquers a country and melts down the old coins to stamp his own face on them.
Exactly. 1909 was a declaration. The gods were dead. The giants were gone. The Greek profile was retired. The managerial class, represented by Lincoln, the lawyer, the politician, had taken over.
It signifies the shift from the builder era to the manager era. The builders were gone. So they put a human face on the money to tell us it's your world now, but we still own the debt.
Sure do. So we have the art and we have the coins. But the skeptics in the chat are already typing. I see that. Mark, Lynna, this is pareidolia. You're seeing faces in clouds.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the biology. Because if these builders existed, they had to have bones, right? They had to leave skeletons. And it turns out they did. We just have to look in the medical journals of the 19th century, not the history books.
And I want to introduce you to a term that has been conveniently forgotten by modern science, the Toulouse deformity.
This is fascinating. In the late 1800s, in the Toulouse region of France, doctors began documenting a bizarre condition. They found that a significant number of the local population, specifically the peasantry and the old country gentry, had elongated skulls.
We're talking about cone heads here, skulls that extended backwards and upwards significantly longer than the average human. Now, the mainstream explanation, because they always have a safe explanation, is that it was artificial cranial deformity, or ACD.
They claim that for centuries, French mothers were tightly binding their babies' heads with bands of cloth called bandeaux or coiffes to force the skull into this shape. They say it was a fashion statement.
Think about that. Why would a peasant woman in the 1850s bind her child's head to look like a monster unless that monster represented the highest form of power and status in her world?
Humans mimic the elite. We dye our hair to look like movie stars. We wear suits to look like bankers. If the peasants were crushing their skulls, it's because the real aristocracy, the ancient rulers of France, Well, they naturally look like that. The peasants were trying to pass, as us trans people understand the word pass, as the old blood.
And we have records of this. There are accounts of Burgundian royalty having a specific head shape. But here is where the binding theory falls apart, is a physics problem.
Right. You can bind a skull to change its shape. You can squash it. You can flatten it, make it tall or wide, but you cannot change its volume. You cannot create more bone mass by wrapping a head in a towel.
Dr. Paul Broca, the famous French physician, actually studied these skulls in the 1870s. He found that many of them had cranial capacities significantly larger than the average human. We're talking about 1,800 to 1,900, even 2,000 cubic centimeters. The average human is 1,350.
You can't bind a brain into growing 40% bigger.
Doesn't happen.
That's impossible. If the skull is bigger, the genetics are different. These weren't deformed humans, Mark. They were different as a breed.
Totally. And this leads us to the phrenology. We're taught that phrenology, the study of skull bumps, was just a racist pseudoscience used to justify slavery. And sure, it was used for that, but consider the timing.
It exploded in the 1830s and 1840s, right before the reset. It was a massive obsession in America and Europe. Everyone was measuring heads.
My theory, phrenology wasn't a science. It was a census. It was a screening program. They were cataloging the population to find the last survivors of the old blood. They were looking for the bumps that signal giant genetics.
It makes perfect sense. If you're the new managers taking over the world, you need to identify the competition. You need to find the people who have the builder traits, the high capacity brains, the telepathic capabilities, and you need to remove them.
And once you remove them, you have to hide the bodies. Which brings us to the Smithsonian Institution.
The Smithsonian, founded in 1846. Again, consider the date, right before the reset or right in the middle of it. Founded by James Smithson, a British chemist who, get this, never even visited the United States. He left his fortune to a country he never saw to found an institution he never planned.
And what was the Smithsonian's first job? It wasn't building museums. No, it was collecting Indian mounds.
We have the newspaper reports, Mark. I have a list here. 1883, Mandan, North Dakota. A cemetery of giants is dug up. The skeletons are 7 feet tall. The Smithsonian arrives and confiscates them. 1891, Crittenden, Arizona. Workmen excavate a massive stone sarcophagus containing a 12-foot humanoid with 6 toes. The Bible mentions six toes.
Yeah.
You know, Goliath had 6 toes. Yeah. The Smithsonian takes it. 1870, West Hickory, Pennsylvania. An 18-foot skeleton is found under a mound, 18 feet.
And every single time the story is the same. The local paper reports it with excitement. Giant found. Then a week later, men from Washington, D.C. arrive. They crate it up. They take it away. And then silence.
And if you ask the Smithsonian today, they'll tell you, we have no records of giant skeletons. Those were elephant bones. The farmers were uneducated.
Elephant bones. Do you think a farmer who butchers livestock every day of his life doesn't know the difference between a human femur and an elephant leg? It's insulting.
They're hiding the history of the human race, because if they admit that giants walked this continent just a mere 150 years ago, the whole story of evolution and progress, well, that collapses. You know, you might as well kiss the carousel of progress. Goodbye. We aren't getting better, Mark. We are the runts of the litter living in the ruins of the masters.
And, you know, you look at these old buildings and the size of the doors and the way things were made. They weren't made for little people like us. No. They were made for giants, you know.
That brings us to Vignette 2, the Smithsonian basement.
Here we go.
Washington, D.C., 1912. The sub-basement of the Museum of Natural History.
Dr. Hudlicker, the crate from the Ohio Valley arrived. The manifest says, Anomaly Class A.
Open it.
Good lord. Look at the jawbone. It's massive. I can fit my entire head inside it.
Measure the femur.
32 inches. Sir, this man would have stood 8.5 feet tall, and the teeth double rows. Like the Kentucky Fire.
It is not a man, Perkins. It is a mistake.
A mistake? Sir, this changes everything. The Adena culture, they weren't Indians. They were
nothing. They do not exist. Do you understand? The charter is clear. We are building a narrative of ascent. From the ape, to the savage, to the white man. Where does an 8-foot super being fit in that line?
It doesn't. It places us below them.
Exactly. We are not here to humble the public. We are here to govern them.
So, the incinerator?
No. The barge. We are pouring the foundation for the new wing tomorrow. Let them be part of the concrete. They built this world. They can hold up the floor.
And it doesn't surprise me as we're being lied to about everything right now, boldly, telling us what we can't see with our own eyes. What makes us think that they haven't totally lied?
That's why we're doing this show.
Yeah. They built this world. They can hold up the floor. That is the reality. We're walking on top of them.
It establishes the motive. They killed the giants. They stole the buildings. And they hid the bodies. But Mark, a skeleton is one thing. A living giant is another. How did they kill them all? Because you can't just shoot a race of super beings with muskets, right?
No, you don't use guns. You use physics. You turn off their life support. And that leads us to the resonance war.
The technician class, the Levites, and the transition to maritime law. That's interesting.
Yeah. We ended the last segment with a massive logical problem. We established that the builders, quote unquote, were 8 feet tall, had double our brain capacity, and possessed technology that could shape granite like clay. They were superior to us in every physical metric. So how did we beat them?
Exactly. In the animal world, the runt does not hunt the apex predator to extinction. A chihuahua does not wipe out a pack of wolves, right? So if the small people, us, won the war, it wasn't through physical combat. We didn't beat them with muskets and bayonets.
The answer isn't war. It's environment. We see this in nature all the time. If you take a deep sea fish, a creature evolved for high pressure environments, and you bring it to the surface, what do you think happens? Well, it dies instantly. It doesn't die because you shot it. It dies because the pressure dropped. It suffers from catastrophic decompression.
So my theory, and the theory supported by the Starfleet maps, is that the builders faced the exact same problem. They didn't just live on the Earth. They lived in a specific frequency field that sustained them. Their physiology was expensive. To pump blood vertically against the gravity for 8 feet or 17 feet or 18 feet, to oxygenate a 2200 cc brain, that requires a massive amount of energy.
And I think the oxygen, if you look at history in the past, there was a lot more oxygen. Something happened to this planet, whether it was induced by outer forces that decreased the oxygen level, which probably also decreased the vibration of the planet, which could have affected the giants. A human heart can pump blood 5 or 6 feet, but 8 feet, that requires an assistance. It requires an environmental pressure that is higher than what we have today. And they built an entire global infrastructures to maintain that field.
So this brings us to the star forts, and we've mentioned them before, but we've cataloged thousands of them. Europe, the Americas, Asia, even Africa. Mainstream history tells us they are bastion forts designed to deflect cannonballs. They say the star shape is just to create interlocking fields of fire.
That explanation is laughable when you consider the blueprints. I'm looking at the Citadel of Alexandria right now. It's not just a star, it's a fractal. It has water channels that flow in specific geometric loops. It has copper lined basements. If you're building a bunker to stop a cannonball, you'd build a thick, ugly wall. You wouldn't build a delicate 12-point snowflake that maximized surface area.
Maximizing surface area is exactly what you do when you build a heat sink or an antenna.
Those aren't forts, Lynna. They are resonance machines. Consider this. On the left, Palmanova, Italy. On the right, a somatic pattern of water vibrating at 432 hertz. They are identical. This isn't coincidence. It suggests that star forts were built on the nodal points of the Earth's electromagnetic grid. They were designed to resonate with the Earth's field and amplify it.
They were creating a vibrational atmosphere. As long as the star forts were humming, the air was charged, the atmospheric pressure was optimized, the giants were strong, their blood oxygenated efficiently, and their massive bones remained dense. The grid acted like a wireless charger for their specific biology.
But here's the catch. If you have a global machine, someone has to run it. You don't build a nuclear reactor and walk away. You need a crew. You need engineers. And this is where we have to reread the ancient texts with fresh eyes.
We need to talk about the Levites. In the Bible, the 12 tribes of Israel are given land. Judah gets land. Benjamin gets land. But the tribe of Levi, they get no land. They're told their inheritance is, quote unquote, the Lord.
Religious scholars say that means they were priests. But consider their job description. The Levites were the only ones allowed to touch the Ark of the Covenant. And what was the Ark? It was a gold-plated box lined with acacia wood, an insulator, topped with winged figures. It was a massive capacitor.
And it was dangerous. The texts are clear. If a non-Levite touched the Ark, they died instantly. They were electrocuted. The Levites had to wear specific breastplates with crystals, likely for radiation shielding or grounding, and they had to wear linen garments, which do not generate static electricity.
The Levites weren't just priests, Lynna. They were the technician class. They were the priest engineers bred by the builders to interface with the high voltage of the old world grid. They were the IT department, if you will.
So you have the giants, the owners, and the Levites, the technicians. The system worked for thousands of years. But then 1859 happened.
The Carrington event. Official history says it was a solar flare, the biggest in record history. Telegraph wire melted, the sky turned red, but in 1859 is the exact start of the reset window. It's right when the orphan train started. It's right when the Indian head penny appears. What if the Carrington event wasn't a solar flare? What if it was a weapon? What if it was an EMP? And the electromagnetic pulse triggered to short circuit the star fort grid. And I think had something to do with Yahweh.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that comes to my mind is where they first attacked and during the Civil War was Fort McHenry, and it was a star fort. So they're attacking a star fort after they probably released an electromagnetic impulse weapon that fried everything. And you see the pictures we've shown in the past of the cities, Charleston and other places,
Melted.
just devastated.
We on our journey, we saw a lot of that. We also went into a place where we said this must have been some intervention from ships in the sky. I'm talking like, something not human.
Massive.
Yeah, that literally interfered.
So if that happened, the wireless charger, it turns off like instantly.
Yeah, and the giants, they start to suffocate, not from lack of air, but from lack of charge. Their circulation slows down. Their blood begins to separate. They suffer from an acute atmospheric decompression.
The mid-19th century, the sky is red from the ionization. The ground is liquefying, the mud flood, because the frequency holding the soil together is gone. And in the palaces, the giants are dying.
Yeah, and I think it's a good time now to play, what is it? One of your songs that you wrote and put together. It didn't start, on January 6th.
Okay.
So this is one of in this creation. Hope you guys enjoy.
Wake up. It didn't start on January 6th. It started long before the bricks, before the chants and broken glass, before the crowd was pushed en masse. He said it before a vote was cast. If I lose, the game was rigged at blast. Echoed through the screens and streams, a backup plan disguised as screams. Wake up! America, the fire was set. Long before we felt the threat, truth was twisted, loud and clear, till the lies became what we all hear. They met the night before the flight. In hotel rooms they planned the game. Not chaos, but precision moves. Each echo timed, each step approved. We saw the signs, ignored the sound, as history circled back around. Wake up! America, the mirror cracks, and we can't just turn our backs. They came prepared, they came in lines, and left behind their battle signs. They didn't bring their weapons in, they hid them, waited to begin, waiting for a signal, a show that never came. But we all know they were waiting for the green light, for the nod from the king in the spotlight. Wake up, America, this ain't done. The first attempt was just phase one. Adapted tactics, altered form, same agenda in a brand new storm. Now they're back in suits and ties, calling truth their alibi, rewriting pages, seeding doubt, while justice flickers, burning out. The coup didn't fail. It paused, it watched, it learned, and waits.
Definitely a powerful song, and we're seeing all this stuff just unravel right before our very eyes. You have to be blind not to see it, but it's important for people to really become aware of what's happening here. I want to ask you guys, if you're not subscribed, please take this moment now to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for those of you that are watching on Facebook, thank you for watching. But if you get a chance, go into our YouTube channel and take the time to hit that notification bell and subscribe and share if you can. If you want to support the channel, there's various ways to do so. You can either donate through PayPal or become a Patreon, or there's also links to some of our music on Spotify and iTunes and all that. And you could help us by downloading some of the songs like that. We appreciate you very much. So let's continue with this fascinating topic here. They were fish brought to the surface, and while they were gasping, the new stock, us, the smaller, more compact model, we moved in. We function perfectly well in a low resonance environment. We don't need that grid. And I don't think we just kind of like popped in. I think there's a very mysterious way how we, during the reset, whether it was to the incubator babies, they created the smaller breed, which is us, and they literally like faced away the giants. And I think the bloodline that's governing the world right now are responsible for all of that.
Yeah. So we got a vignette. It's called The Decompression.
Okay, vignette number 3. Here we go.
St. Petersburg, 1860. The Winter Palace.
The hum. Technician, why has the hum stopped?
The grid is broken, Your Highness. The surge from the west, it melted the primary coils in the citadel. The aether is flat.
Fix it. My blood, it feels like sludge. I cannot lift my arm.
There is no fixing it. The capacitors are fused. The signal is gone.
Then start the backup. The organs. Play the pipes. We need the resonance.
We have dismantled the pipes, Highness. We are melting them down for bullets.
You are leaving us. We built you. We gave you the codes.
You gave us the maintenance manual, but the owner is dying. And we must find new employment. Here, drink the wine. It will ease the passing.
Traitors! You will rule over a world of midgets and mud.
Perhaps, but at least we will rule.
It's crazy. We must find new employment. That is the pivotal moment. The technician class, the Levites, the managers, saw the writing on the wall. The giants were finished. The physics had changed. So the technicians defected.
Yeah, they abandoned the giants and decided to cut a deal with the New World. They realized that if free energy was gone, the new population would need a new fuel source. Mm-hmm. And they were perfectly positioned to sell it to us.
That's right. This is the transition from the builder age to the manager age. But the technicians had a problem. The land was ruined. The cities were sinking in mud. So they decided to move their operation. They moved from the land to the sea.
We need to add structural weight to the middle here. And we're talking about the fact that these people were changing ownership, and they were literally going from like this class of people that were being living in this environment that was created as some kind of a like an energy grid that was destroyed.
So we've talked about the star forts acting as the power plants of the old world grid. They collected the charge from the ionosphere, but power plants are useless unless you have a way to distribute that energy to the people. You need a delivery system.
And this forces us to consider the buildings we call cathedrals. Historians tell us these were built by illiterate peasants in the Middle Ages to worship God. They say they dragged these massive stones from quarries 50 miles away, using nothing but ropes and donkeys incorporated, and then carved them with laser precision, simply out of religious devotion.
Oh yeah, the narrative is insulting, actually. Consider the floor plans of a Chartres Cathedral or Notre Dame or even Westminster Abbey, you aren't looking at a church. You are looking at a circuit board.
Specifically, a resonant cavity oscillator. The geometry of a Gothic cathedral is designed to do one thing: trap and amplify sound. The high arches, the vaulted ceilings. It's acoustic engineering that rivals modern concert halls. But why? Why did peasants need perfect acoustics?
Because they weren't praying with words, they were praying with frequency. We need to talk about the rose windows. Consider the rose windows on the screen. It's a complex geometric mandala made of stainless glass. Now consider the image next to it.
They're identical. The petals of the window match the standing wave patterns of the sound perfectly. This tells us that the rose windows weren't just decoration. They were cymatic blueprints.
My theory is that the stained glass wasn't just there to look pretty. It was doped with metal, gold, colloidal silver, copper. When the sun hit that glass, it didn't just filter light, it filtered frequency. It turned the sunlight into a specific light spectrum that interacted with the acoustics of the room.
And what generated the acoustics? The pipe organ.
This is the smoking gun of the cathedral tech. The pipe organ is the most complex machine of the pre-industrial age. Some of these organs have pipes that are 32 feet or even 64 feet long.
For our audio listeners, a 64-foot pipe produces a frequency of roughly 8 hertz. That is infrasound. You can't hear 8 hertz with your ears, but you can feel it. It vibrates the water in your cells. It vibrates your bones.
Hertz is the Schumann resonance. It is the heartbeat of the earth. Why would illiterate monks build a machine capable of generating a frequency that you can't hear, but which matches the electromagnetic pulse of the planet?
Because it was a healing chamber. Imagine the scene. The star forts amplify the atmospheric energy. That energy is channeled into the cathedral. The pipe organ is fired up, generating the 8 hertz Schumann wave. The rose windows filter the light.
If you walked into that building, you weren't going to church. You were walking inside a massive stone medical device. The vibration would align your biology. It would oxygenate your blood. It would knit broken bones.
This explains why the Giants were so obsessed with these buildings. They needed them.
Yep.
Their physiology, that massive 8-foot to almost 18-foot frame, required this external vibration support to stay healthy. The cathedral was like their iron lung.
And what did the managers, quote unquote, do when they took over? They didn't tear the cathedrals down. They were too useful. They repurposed them.
They removed the conductive metal from the roofs. They broke the connection to the star forts, and most importantly, they retuned the organs.
They changed the tuning from the healing frequency of 432 hertz Schumann to the standard concert pitch. They turned a medical machine into a hymn singing box. They turned technology into a religion.
And that brings us to Vignette, the organist.
Leipzig, 1720, the loft of St. Thomas Church.
Kapellmeister! The vibration! It is shaking the dust from the rafters. I feel it in my chest.
It is not loud enough. The air is too thick today. The congregation, they are sick. They are coughing. We must raise the pressure.
But the new bishop, he says the low notes frighten the children. He says they sound like the devil.
The bishop is a fool. He thinks this is music. This is physics, boy. If I stop the low pipe, the air goes stagnant. The sickness spreads.
He wants you to play the new hymns, the ones with the simple melodies.
Simple melodies. That is how they kill us. That is how we all die. They take away the thunder and give us a nursery rhyme. Very well. I will play.
They take away the thunder and give us a nursery rhyme. That is the frequency war in a nutshell. We went from infrasound healing to top 40's distraction.
So we have the antenna, the star fort, and the speaker, the cathedrals. But every machine needs a medium. It needs a fuel to conduct the charge. And this leads us to the most suppressed substances in chemistry, mercury and radium.
Consider the tops of the old world buildings, the Capitol domes, the cathedral spires. You always see these massive metal balls or urns. Historians say they are decorative, but researchers who have climbed up there and cracked them open found something interesting.
Well, they're often filled with mercury, but not just thermometer mercury, a specific red-tinted mercury compound. In the conspiracy community, this is called red mercury.
Science tells us red mercury is a myth or a Soviet hoax. But consider the physics. Mercury is a superconductor. If you spin mercury inside a magnetic field, you generate anti-gravity effects. You generate massive electromagnetic fields.
And the theory is that these urns on the roofs were the capacitors. They held the charge collected from the ether. The mercury acted as the amplifier.
And inside the homes, we have to talk about the fireplaces.
This is one of those things that once you see, you can't unsee. Consider the fireplaces in the Gilded Age mansions, the Vanderbilts, the Astors. They are massive. You could park a car in them, and they are often lined with heavy iron plates and flanked by two massive metal figures, usually dogs or sphinxes called andirons.
We are told these were for burning wood, but consider the photos. There is no soot. There are no chimneys connected to the outside in some of these old blueprints.
So what were they?
They were radium heaters.
Radium, discovered by Marie Curie in 1898. We're told it is a deadly radioactive poison, but in the early 1900s, before the managerial crackdown, radium was sold as a health tonic.
They put it in the water, Radithor. They put it in toothpaste. They put it in chocolate. They call it liquid sunshine. People reported feeling energized, warm, and cured of aches and pains.
My theory is that the old world fireplaces, well, they didn't burn wood. They held a radium or isotope source that ionized the air. The two metal andirons were the cathode and the anode, and they created a localized plasma field, a glowing warmth that heated the room without smoke.
The hearth was literally the heart of the home. It was a miniature star fort in your own living room.
But then the narrative changed. Suddenly, the managers decided that free energy was bad for business. You can't meter a radium block that lasts for 2,000 years. You can't put a meter on the ether.
So they had to demonize the fuel. They had to make us terrified. That very thing that kept the giants alive.
Enter the radium girls. This is the famous story of the factory workers who painted watch dials with radium paint and died horrific deaths because their jaws fell off. Pretty gross.
No, I'm not saying those women didn't die. They did. But was it the radium or was it the arsenic that was used in the binder for the paint?
Well, it's the perfect cover story, right? Mm-hmm. You poison a few factory workers with arsenic, blame the radium, and then ban radium for the public. You confiscate all the red mercury devices, and you seal up the chimneys.
And you replace the eternal plasma fire with coal.
Coal. You know, Trump loves coal.
Oh, yes.
Dirty, heavy, expensive, ugly, metered coal. They took away our clean, etheric tech and forced us to burn rocks like cavemen.
And who owns the coal mines? The paysayers, the Rockefellers, the railroad tycoons we talked about.
It's a complete energy capture. They destroyed the wireless world and forced us onto the metered grid.
And notice what happened to human health the moment we switched from radium, ether to coal, oil. Cancer rates exploded. Respiratory disease exploded. The giants died out completely, and we were starting to get smaller and sicker.
So this next vignette's called The Hearth.
Newport, Rhode Island, 1895. The Breaker's Mansion.
Grandfather, why is the fire not orange? Why is it purple?
Because it is not burning wood, child. It is burning the air itself. It is the breath of the earth.
It feels tingly, like before a storm.
That is the vitality. Stand close. Let it soak into your bones. It will make you tall. It will make you strong.
Will it ever go out?
Not for 1,000 years. Unless
what?
Unless the men in the black coats come. They do not like the purple fire. They want to sell us the black rocks.
The dirty rocks?
Yes. If they come, we must hide the source. We must put the iron plate in front of the alcove. We will pretend it is a hole for smoke.
I don't want the black rocks. They smell.
Nobody does, child, but the men in black.
They own the smoke. That is the reality of the 20th century. We are living in the smoke age.
And the saddest part is the technology is still there. If you go into these old mansions, the fireplaces are still there. The urns are still on the roofs. The rose windows are still in the cathedrals.
The hardware is sitting right in front of us. We just lost the software. We lost the knowledge of how to turn it back on.
Or it was stolen from us.
Yeah, and that leads us to the theft of the legal system. Because once they stole the energy, they had to steal the law to make sure we couldn't sue them for it. Yep.
This is where the ancient tribe of Dan connection becomes absolute dynamite. In the Bible, there's a very cryptic question asked in the book of Judges. Why did Dan remain in ships?
Think about that. The other tribes were claiming land. They were farmers, shepherds, warriors, holding territory. But the Danites, they were the merchant marines. They were the seafarers. They left the Levant and moved north and west.
Historians have tracked this migration, the Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, the Danes in Denmark, but most importantly, the Phoenicians, who eventually settled in the lagoons of Venice.
Venice is the key. Consider Venice. It's an impossible city. Stone palaces floating on water, built with old world techniques that defy modern engineering. The families who ruled Venice, the black nobility, traced their lineage back to those Danites technicians.
They built an empire based on a completely different legal concept. The land was unstable, mud flood. The nations were burning, civil wars. So they decided to build an empire based on water.
This is the origin of the maritime law, or admiralty law, we live under today. And I want the listeners to really focus on this because it explains why you feel like a slave in your own country. There are two kinds of laws. Common law, which is the law of the land. Under common law, you have God-given rights. You have the right to travel, to own property, to be left alone. It is based on the soil and the soul.
But then there is maritime law, the law of the sea. On a ship, there is no democracy. There are no rights. There is only the captain, and there is the cargo.
The technician class realized that they couldn't rule us as God kings anymore. They could rule us as captains of a corporate vessel. They overthrew the law of the land and replaced it with the law of the sea.
This is why everything in a modern courtroom, as we've discussed in previous shows, is nautical. You stand in the dock, you pay bail, like bailing water. The court is a ship, ownership, citizenship, receivership, and you are a person, a corporation, not a living man.
When you walk into a court, you see the flag with the gold fringe. That is an admiralty flag. It signifies that you are not in American soil. You are under military maritime jurisdiction. You are cargo.
And this connects directly to the birth certificate. When a ship pulls into port, the captain has to give the harbor master a manifest of the cargo. When you were born, your parents signed a birth certificate. It is literally a bill of lading. It transfers ownership of the cargo, the baby, to the state.
Yep, the black nobility of Venice perfected this system. They realized that owning land was messy. Land can be invaded. But owning the debt, owning the title, that is invisible. That is clean.
So, as the 19th century progressed, these Venetian families, the Guelphs and the Ghibellines, moved their operation. Venice was getting too small. They moved their gold, their archives, and their bloodlines north, first to Amsterdam, and finally to London.
But not London, the city of London, the square mile.
It's a sovereign state It has its own mayor, its own police. The queen or king has to ask permission to enter. It is the headquarters of the technician class. It is the star fort of the new financial grid.
It's kind of like the Vatican has its own system, and they don't, their own whatever. From this fortress, they launched a new control system. They replaced the etheric grid, energy, with the financial grid, the debt. But they had a problem. America. The United States was founded on common law. It was founded on land and rights. As long as the U.S. existed as a republic, the maritime empire couldn't totally take over.
So they had to hijack the ship. And to do that, they needed to buy the hardware. They needed to own the railroads, the steel, and the politicians.
And that brings us to the Pajero family and the secret ownership of America.
Giants dying to the history of the cover-up. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. So we've established that the technicians, the black nobility, moved to London to set up the financial grid. But they left something behind. They left a massive population of old blood entities, the giants who were slowly dying of frequency starvation.
We described it as decompression sickness. Without the star forts humming, the atmosphere was too thin for their physiology. They became lethargic, confused, and physically ill. So the technicians had to do something with them. They couldn't just leave 8-foot-tall beings wandering the streets while they were trying to install the new small population.
They needed a place to put them, a place that looked benevolent but functioned as a prison. And this brings us to one of the most baffling architectural phenomenon of the 19th century, the Kirkbride buildings.
For our listeners, Thomas Kirkbride was a doctor who proposed a specific design for asylums in the mid-1800s. And when I say asylums, I don't mean hospitals. I mean palaces.
Considered an image of the Danvers State Hospital or the Greystone Park Psychiatric Hospital. These are massive Gothic revival structures. They look like castles. They have spires, slate roofs, and miles of corridors. They are built with millions of red bricks and usually sit on the highest hill in the country.
The official story is that the state governments, which were supposedly broke after the Civil War, spent millions of dollars to build lavish palaces for the quote-unquote insane.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? Since when does the government treat the mentally ill like royalty?
It makes no sense. Unless they're built for lunatics, they were built for refugees.
Look at the geometry. Kirkbride plan always features a central administration building with long batwing wards stretching out to the sides, creates a massive surface area, and they're almost exclusively built of red brick.
We know from our previous episodes that red brick, specifically old world red brick, contains high amounts of iron and silica. It is conductive. It acts as a battery storage medium.
My theory is that these asylums were atmospheric batteries. The technicians built them on high ground to catch the wind and the ether, used the red brick to store the charge, and designed the geometry to concentrate whatever frequency was left in the environment.
I'm thinking here of how so much of these oligarchs and Trump himself are anti-windmills, anti-electric cars, anti-anything that uses the environment to bring us energy. And it's like he comes from the same stock of what took over the New World. They were trying to build lifeboats. They were trying to create a pressurized, high-frequency environment to keep the giants alive, or at least to keep them comfortable while they died.
And consider the diagnosis of the patients. If you read the intake ledgers of these asylums in the 1870s and 1880s, the number one diagnosis isn't schizophrenia, it's melancholia.
Extreme lethargy, confusion, sorrow. That sounds exactly like the symptoms of hypoxia or decompression sickness. The giants were suffocating. Their brains weren't getting enough charge, so they went mad.
Technicians locked them in these red brick batteries, told the public that they were monsters or lunatics to keep us away, and simply waited for them to die out.
It was a hospice for a dying race. And once the last giant died, what happened to the buildings?
Well, they became state hospitals. They stuffed them with Those new orphans with the unwanted, with political dissidents, but the buildings themselves tell the story. The doors are tall. I mean, they're too tall. The ceilings are 14 feet high. Staircases are massive. They weren't built for us, Mark. We are just squatting in the giants' deathbeds.
Yep, totally.
And that brings us to the next vignette called The Ward.
That's
Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, West Virginia, 1875.
Dr. Kirkbride, the patient in Ward 4, he is refusing food again. He sits by the window and stares at the sun.
Let him stare, nurse. It is the only medicine we have left.
But he is so large, doctor. It takes 4 orderlies to move him. And his skin, it is grey. It feels cold, like stone.
He is fading. The iron in the bricks is not holding the charge. The winter was too harsh.
He speaks, sometimes, in a language I do not know. He calls for the hum. He asks why the sky is silent.
Do not listen to him. It is the madness.
Is it? Or is he remembering?
Remembering is a disease, nurse. That is why we are here. To help them forget. And to help the world forget them. When he passes, call the incinerator crew.
Remembering is a disease. That is the motto of the reset. They needed the world to forget that these beings ever existed. And to do that, they didn't just hide the bodies, they had to delete the country. If you tell someone today there was a massive empire called Tartaria, they consider you like you're crazy. They say, Mark, I took history in high school. There was the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the British Empire. There was no Tartaria.
And they are right if they're reading a textbook printed after 1900. But if you go back, if you find the books that survived the fires, the story is very different.
I have a digital copy here of the Encyclopedia Britannica, first edition, printed in 1771. This was the Google of its day. It was the sum of human knowledge.
Mark, read the entry for Tartary.
Tartary, a vast country in the northern part of Asia, bounded by Siberia on the north and west. This is called the Great Tartary. The Tartars living south of Muscovy and Siberia are those of the Astrakhan, Circassia, and Dagestan. A vast country, not a region, not a wasteland, a country. And consider the maps from that era, maps by reputable artographers like Hondius or Mercator. They label it Grand Tartary. It covers all of Russia, Mongolia, and parts of China and North America.
It was the biggest empire on earth. It had cities, it had a flag, the owl and the griffin, it had a government. So how do you delete the biggest empire on earth from the history books in less than 100 years?
You burn the books. We've talked about the great fires earlier, Chicago, Boston, and Washington. Those fires didn't just burn buildings. They burned libraries. They burned the records.
And then you released the Encyclopedia Britannica 1850 edition. And suddenly, wow, the entry's gone. Or it's changed. Now Tartary is just a vague geographical term for where the barbarians live.
Yeah, it's the Mandela effect weaponized. They physically edited the timeline. By the time the new stock, us, went to school in the 1920s, Tartaria was a myth. The Russian Empire had taken credit for all the buildings. The Chinese Empire took credit for the Great Wall.
They chopped up the carcass of the giant empire and fed it to the new nations. Russia got the Kremlin, which they didn't build. China got the wall, which faces the wrong way, ironically. And America, well, we got the capitals.
And the technicians thought they got away with it. They thought the deletion was complete, but they made a mistake.
The CIA.
Now we have to talk about the declassified CIA document called The Cultural History of the USSR, released in 1957. This was internal intel. The CIA wasn't trying to fool the public. They were talking to themselves.
And in that document, the CIA explicitly states, and this is record, or let us take the matter of history, which, along with religion, language, and literature, constitutes the core of a people's cultural heritage. Here again, the communists have interfered in a shameless manner. For example, on August 9, 1944, the Central Committee of the Communist Party ordered the party's Tartar Provincial Committee to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character.
Scientific revision. Liquidate shortcomings. That is a spook speak for fake the history. The CIA knew in 1957 that the Soviet Union was actively erasing the history of Tartaria to destroy the nationalistic character of the region.
They were wiping the memory of the builders to ensure the people remain loyal to the new communist state. If you know you are the descendant of giants, you don't bow down to a commissar.
Exactly. Identity is power. If they can make you believe your ancestors were mud hut savages, you will accept a mediocre life. But if you know your ancestor was masters of frequency who built the world, you become ungovernable.
That is why they erased the maps. That's why they hid the skulls. That's why they burned the libraries. They're terrified of us remembering who we are. That's also why they
have all those
enslaved
combs that are like underneath.
Oh, that too. But I was going to say that, the great African continent and its great history and its great people were demonized as savages and made to look like they were nothing but these peasant slaves.
True ownership, it's really bizarre. But we just established that the black nobility moved their headquarters to the city of London to run the software of the world, the maritime law. But software is useless without hardware. You can have all the laws you want, but if you don't own the land, the steel, and the transit, you don't own the country.
And this is where the history books get really incredibly foggy. We are taught the American dream version of history. We're told that the great robber barons, I guess, think about that word, robber, baron, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the criminals, were self-made geniuses. We're told that they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and built the railroads and the oil refineries from scratch.
But consider the actual deeds, the corporate charters and the trust documents from the 19th century. A different name appears in the shadows, a name that most Americans have never heard. It isn't in the textbooks, it isn't on the statues, yet it might be the name of the deed to the entire United States. We need to talk about Daniel Pazur.
The Pazur story is the Rosetta Stone of the American conspiracy. It connects the old blood of Europe directly to the industrial infrastructure of the United States. The theory goes like this. During the French Revolution, the king and queen, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, were executed. But the crown prince, Louis XVII, did not die in the Temple Tower prison, as the official history proclaims.
So remember, the French always carry the builder genetics. They had the Rh negative blood, the specific cranial structure. They were the biological keys to the old power, the technician class, the lawyers. You cannot let that genetic line go extinct. It was too valuable.
So they staged a body swap. They smuggled the prince out of Paris, first to England, and then eventually to, of all places, North Carolina.
So with that, I'm going to play our next song. It's called A New World. I wrote this back in 2009 or so, and I remixed it using Suno. So enjoy.
Your world is ending. A new beginning awaits us all. The rift is open.
Listen, children of this world. Yes, I am speaking to you, sir. The one that holds the credit card. Listen closely, this is God, who speaks through me and speaks through you. your world? What disasters have you formed? Killing programmed out machines, care about nothing but your being. Who speaks through me and speaks through you? You don't need books to know the truth. Enough is enough. The time is up, and we need to start a new world. Yes, we need to start a new world. Particles that we are from, floating atoms and neutrons. Together we must become one. Can't you see this, my dear sons? Who speaks through me and speaks through you? You don't need books to know the truth. Enough is enough. The time is up, and we need to start a new world. Yes, we need to start a new world. Become aware, awakened child. The time to learn the truth is now. It's all a dream you can't awake. Cannot continue on this way. Who speaks through me and speaks through you? You don't need books to know the truth. Enough is enough. The time is up, and we need to start a new world.
Intense video. So anyway, he adopted the name Daniel Pazur, but he didn't come here as a poor refugee. No, he came here as a conqueror in exile. He arrived with a massive war chest of the old world, gold, the assets of the French crown that had been funneled out before the revolution.
Specifically, the gold mines and the railroads.
So in the 1800s, the railroad was the internet, the highway, and the Amazon delivery network all rolled into one. If you own the tracks, you own the nation. You control the supply chains, the mail, the telegraph lines, and the mineral rights on both sides of the tracks.
But Pazer was smart. He knew the technician playbook. He knew that if a French monarch put his name on the American railroads, it would trigger a second revolution. People would burn the tracks.
So he invented a system of trustees. This is the key to understanding modern capitalism. Pazur didn't put his name on the trains. He leased the management rights to ambitious, ruthless men who were willing to do the dirty work.
He hired frontmen, Cornelius Vanderbilt, names like J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, and John D. Rockefeller.
These men weren't the kings of industry. They were the middlemen, the middle managers, actually. They were the CEOs hired to run the company for the silent shareholders. Vanderbilt got the Biltmore estate, he got the fame, he got the public hatred, but he didn't own the underlying assets. It was just puppets.
Yeah. And we have the proof of this structure. If you dig into the archives of the North Carolina courthouses, you find massive land trusts and lease agreements. These railroads are often operated on 99-year leases. Mm-hmm. They don't own the land. They are tenants on the page or plantation, basically.
So it explains why these families, the Rockefellers and Morgans, seem to have unlimited power, yet they always act in lockstep with a global agenda. They aren't independent. They are employees. If they step out of line, the owners can revoke the lease.
And this connects back to the Virginia Company. We have to remember the United States didn't just pop into existence as a free republic. The original colonies were corporate charters granted by the British Crown.
The Virginia Company was a corporation. When the United States was incorporated, you heard that right, in 1871, the District of Columbia Organic Act, it essentially became subsidiary of the City of London.
So you have a technician class running the banks in London, the software, and a secret bloodline, Pazor, owning the railroads and land in America, the hardware. They had the board set up. The trap was laid.
But there was a problem. As the 20th century approached, some of the new stock, the American millionaires, who made their money in real industry, started to ask questions. They started to resist the next phase of the plan.
We're talking about the Federal Reserve. Technicians wanted to introduce a central bank that could print money from nothing. But the old guard of America, men who believed in gold and land, well, they stood in the way.
Men like John Jacob Astor VI, the richest man in the world, he was land rich. He didn't need debt, and he opposed the Federal Reserve. Pazur and the black nobility needed to liquidate the opposition. But you can't just shoot the richest man in the world. You need an act of God.
So we have the vignette called The Lease.
The study of Daniel Pazur.
The public calls me a devil, Daniel. They burn effigies of me in the street. The Commodore, they sneer. I am the face of greed in this country.
And you are paid handsomely for it, Cornelius. The lightning strikes the tallest tree. You are the tree. I am the roots. The roots must remain underground.
But the lease, 99 years? My grandsons will be dead before we own the tracks outright.
You will never own the tracks, Cornelius. You own the ties. You own the steam. You own the rolling stock. But the earth beneath them, the right of way, that belongs to the trust. That belongs to the blood.
You treat this country like a plantation.
It is a plantation. We are merely changing the crop. It used to be cotton. Now it is connectivity. Now sign the paper. Be the king of railroads, but never forget who owns the kingdom.
One day, Daniel, the people will wake up.
The people are cargo, Cornelius. They go where the tracks take them.
The people are cargo. That is the mindset. We are inventory moving on their rails.
And that brings us to the ultimate liquidation of the human obstacles. The famous Titanic.
We have the managers in place. We have the owners in hiding. But every coup requires a final decisive blow to silence the remaining opposition. In the transition from the old world, gold and land, to the new world, debt, fiat, that blow was struck on April 15th, 1912.
We are talking about the famous sinking of the Titanic. Now everyone knows the movie. The love story.
Oh, yes.
The iceberg. The band playing Near My God to Thee as the ship sank. But consider the passenger manifest through the lens of our investigation. We're not talking about the character in Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet.
Yep.
You realize that the ship wasn't carrying tourists. It was carrying the resistance.
So who was on the boat? John Jacob Astor VI, the wealthiest man in the world, a vocal opponent of the central bank. Benjamin Guggenheim, mining magnate, real asset, wealth. Isidor Strauss, retail giant, Macy's.
These men represented the old guard of American capitalism. They believed that wealth came from production and assets. They were skeptical of the financial technicians who wanted to create a system of pure debt, the Federal Reserve we have today.
Yeah, as long as Astor and his circle held the purse strings of America and sat in the Senate lobbies, the Federal Reserve Act was dead on arrival. They had the power to block it.
So the technicians built a trap, a floating palace owned by the White Star Line. And who owned the White Star Line?
Well, J.P. Morgan, the manager for the Peugeot and the Rothschilds' interests.
Morgan personally invited these men to the maiden voyage. He heavily marketed it as the quote-unquote unsinkable ship, a challenge to God himself. He created a spectacle that these ego-driven billionaires couldn't resist.
But here's the darker layer, the theory of the switch. Researchers have presented compelling evidence that the ship that sailed out of the Southampton wasn't the Titanic, it was her older sister, the Olympic.
Consider the portholes on the B deck. The Titanic had unevenly spaced windows.
Yeah, the Olympic had evenly spaced windows. The ship that sank had the Olympic's windows configuration.
Why switch them? Because the Olympic was a broken ship. It had collided with the HMS Hawk months earlier. It had a bent keel. The insurance companies refused to pay out, ruling it was the Olympic's fault. It was a massive financial liability for J.P. Morgan.
So the plan was diabolical in its efficiency. Patch up the broken Olympic, swap the nameplates and the linens, send it out as the Titanic, sink it on purpose to collect the insurance money, fraud, use the accident to kill the political opposition, trap on board, assassination.
It's a double tap, profit and power. And the smoking gun, J.P. Morgan, well, he canceled his ticket.
Hours before the ship left port, Morgan claimed he was ill. He said he needed to rest at a spa in France, yet witness reports seeing him days later in perfectly good health, enjoying his vacation and smoking cigars, while his rivals were freezing to death in the North Atlantic.
And it wasn't just J.P. Morgan. Milton Hershey canceled. Henry Clay Frick canceled. The inner circle knew. They stayed on shore. They let Astor walk up that gangplank, effectively walking into a gas chamber.
And when that ship went down, the opposition to the Federal Reserve drowned with it. The timeline is terrifying. April 1912, the old guard dies. December 1913, the Federal Reserve Act is passed.
They waited less than 2 years while the country was distracted, while Congress was away for Christmas. They pushed through the legislation that enslaved the U.S. economy.
1913 is the year the cage door locked. We got the Federal Reserve, debt engine. We got the income tax, the harvest.
We got the 17th Amendment, removing state power. Before 1913, you kept what you earned. After 1913, your labor belonged to the state, and the value of your money belonged to the bank. The maritime law coup was complete.
The technician had fully seized control of the hardware and the software. The face of power was gone from the coins. The old money was at the bottom of the ocean, and the new managers were in charge.
So we have the vignette about the Titanic in a scene on a lifeboat.
North Atlantic, Lifeboat 4.
It's gone. Good God, it's gone. Astor, Guggenheim, I saw them on the deck. They were dressed for dinner.
They died as they lived, thinking the world was solid.
Solid? It was an iceberg. It was an accident.
Icebergs are convenient, my friend, but the math was inevitable.
What are you talking about? Thousands are dead.
The old world is dead. Tonight, the heavy gold sinks to the bottom. Tomorrow, the paper floats to the top.
You knew. Morgan knew.
The captain always leaves the ship before the rats, or he ensures he is never on board. Look at it go. The end of an era. Best learn to swim in the new world, friend.
The heavy gold sinks. the paper floats. That is the epitaph of the 20th century. We move from civilization of substance, of giants, of stone, of gold, to a civilization of illusion.
Paper money, paper laws, paper people.
And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the surviving managers. They won the war, but they lost something in the process. They lost the connection to the life force, and now they are hungry. So we have laid out the crime. We showed how the technician class killed the giants in 1859, seized the law, maritime, and hijacked the money, 1913. But if you are listening to this, you might be thinking, Mark, if they control the money and the law, why do I feel it in my body? Why am I so tired? Why is everyone so sick?
Wow, that is the final layer of the cage. The financial coup of 1913 was just the paperwork. To truly control a population of literal billions, you can't just tax them. You have to numb them. You have to break their connection to the old world reality.
We call this the frequency cage, and it started the minute the Titanic went down. Once the managers, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, secured the money printer, they turned their unlimited funds towards medicine.
We need to talk about the Flexner Report of 1910. Most people have never heard of it, but it is the reason your doctor prescribes pills instead of cures.
So before 1910, American medicine was diverse. It was old world. You had homeopath, naturopath, and most importantly, electrotherapists. Doctors understood that the body was an electric system, a biological battery. They used voltage, frequency, and vibrations to treat disease.
They had technologies like the Lakhovsky multi-wave oscillator, which used copper coils identical to the Starford geometry to resonate with human cells. They had Royal Rife, who was building microscopes that used light frequency to shatter viruses, like a singer shattering a wine glass.
I remember when I was working as an occupational therapist for myself. I had my own business, and I did some business interaction with this guy who had this machine where they called it the Matrix, actually, or something like that, and it was electrical and would do a whole sorts of different type of healings with children that were born with disabilities and stuff, and it was all through frequency and energy.
Wow.
And it worked very well. This was resonance medicine. It worked, and more importantly, it was cheap. You couldn't patent frequency. You couldn't bottle a vibration. That's the problem there.
So John D. Rockefeller, who owned Standard Oil, well, he saw a problem. He wanted to sell petrochemicals. He realized that if he could turn oil byproducts into quote-unquote medicine, he could monopolize the human body. But first, he had to destroy the competition.
He hired a man named Abraham Flexner. Flexner wasn't a doctor. He was a school teacher. Rockefeller paid him to travel to every medical school in America and grade them.
The Flexner Report was a hit job. It recommended closing down, ironically, any medical school that taught electrotherapy, magnetism, or natural healing. It argued that the only scientific medicine was chemical medicine, specifically the kind that could be patented and sold by the pharmaceutical cartel.
Overnight, the electrical medicine of the ancient was criminalized. Schools were defunded, Rives Labs was raided, Lakhovsky's coils were scrapped, the human body was reclassified. It was no longer an antenna that needed tuning. It was a machine that needed chemical lubrication.
This was the biological reset. They disconnected us from the electric nature of the universe. But they didn't stop at the hospital. They went after culture.
We have to talk about music. Sound is vibration. Vibration is control. In the old world, instruments were often tuned to a 432 hertz. This is Verdi's A. It's mathematically consistent with the golden ratio and the geometry of nature.
When you play 432 hertz music, it feels centered. It resonates in the chest. It promotes a state of calm and clarity.
But in the mid-20th century, there was a massive coordinated push to standardize the tuning of the entire Western world to a 440 hertz. This wasn't an artistic choice. It was pushed by Rockefeller Foundation and military acousticians.
Why change the pitch by 8 hertz? It seems so small. But on a somatic plate where sound shapes matter, 440 hertz creates a pattern that is fuzzy. It's agitated.
Biologically, 440 hertz is known to stimulate the left brain, the logical, anxious, fight or flight center, while suppressing the right brain, the seat of intuition and emotion. By tuning all music, all radio, and all TV to 440 hertz, they created a frequency fence.
It keeps us in a state of subtle, subconscious anxiety. We can't hear it, but our cells feel it. We are constantly vibrating slightly off from the natural world.
And finally, the kill switch, the pineal gland.
Third eye, the seat of the soul. Every ancient culture revered this tiny pine cone-shaped gland in the center of the brain. The builders knew it was the biological receiver. It contains piezoelectric crystals. It is how we tune in.
If you want to trap a species in a materialistic simulation, you have to break the antenna. And the most effective way to destroy the pineal gland is sodium fluoride.
We are told it's for our teeth. The fluoride is a toxic byproduct of the aluminum and fertilizer industries. And biologically, it has a magnetic attraction to the pineal gland. It accumulates there and turns the soft tissue into calcium phosphate.
It literally turns your third eye into stone. A calcified gland cannot resonate. It cannot produce DMT. It shuts down the spiritual Wi-Fi.
Flexner took the tools. 440 hertz jammed the signal. Fluoride broke the receiver.
We're rocking around, deaf, blind, and numb. That is why the managers are safe. Even if the truth is right in front of us, we physically cannot perceive it.
And that brings us to the next vignette called The Tuning.
North Atlantic, Lifeboat 4. Berlin, 1939, an international radio conference.
Maestro, the new standard, A440. It feels sharp. It makes the teeth ache. The violins lose their warmth.
It is not about warmth, Hans. It is about brilliance. It cuts through the static. It is a military frequency.
But the singers, they strain to reach it. It creates tension in the throat, in the audience.
Tension keeps them awake, Hans. Tension keeps them alert. The old tuning, the 442, it makes them dream. We do not want them dreaming. We want them marching.
It is a violence against the air.
It is the sound of the new order. Now, tune your strings and tighten them until they scream.
We do not want them dreaming. That is the agenda. A population that dreams is dangerous. A population that is anxious is profitable. It would be hopeless if the managers were winning, but they aren't. They are dying.
We established that the technician class survived the reset, but they're still cut off from the overall energy. They destroyed the star forts that kept them young. So now, 100 years later, they are biologically collapsing.
Consider the ancient billionaires, the ancient politicians. They look like ghouls. They're desperate for life extension, and this leads to the darkest secret of the elite, parabasis.
This is the practice of transfusion, taking the blood plasma of the young. We've heard it.
Yeah, what is it, Lunachrome or something like that?
Adrenochrome. Specifically the new stock, us, and putting it into the old. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's actually a business model in Silicon Valley.
They are vampirizing the population because they cannot generate their own vitality. They need our loosh, our emotional energy, our cortisol, our life force. They built a fear factory because they eat fear.
But that is their weakness. A parasite needs the host. The host does not need the parasite.
And that is the message of this entire series. We are not the victims. We are the batteries. And a battery can choose where to send its power.
So how do we disconnect? How do we exit the frequency cage?
We go analog. The managerial system is digital. It is centralized. It is artificial. The builder system was analog. It was natural. Retune your life. Listen to 432 hertz. Surround yourself with natural sound. Break the hypnotic spell of the media.
Purify the vessel. Get a heavy-duty water filter. Remove the fluoride. Decalcify the pineal gland. Wake up the receiver.
Exit the jurisdiction. Stop playing the maritime rules. Own things in the allodial title if you can. Trade in cash. Build community trust, not corporate contracts.
Be the resonance. The star forts are broken, so we have to be the towers. When you act with courage, when you refuse to be afraid, you are generating a frequency that disrupts their control grid.
The technicians are terrified of one thing: the weeds pushing through the concrete. We are the weeds. We are the survivors. We are the children of the reset who refused to die.
The history books say the Tartarians are gone. I consider the chat room, I consider the people waking up, and I say the builders are back.
They hid the keys. We found them. Now let's start the engine.
That's just, let's start the engine. I mean, disconnecting from the digital world is more important than we realize.
Yeah. And I've been saying that way back, when I was doing my crazy videos on YouTube before YouTube got bought over by Google. And I just, really tapped into something. And I was just trying to help people wake up, and it's really hard. I mean, you talk to people in everyday life and you give them little bits of truth, small doses, because I know that a lot of people can't handle it, but you always see this dazed look in their eyes. And that's when, I pull away. I'm like, okay, not ready yet.
Yeah. I mean, like you're at the gym or something and you start to say something and you realize, oh,
yeah.
You don't,
never mind. Let's talk about how much weight can you lift for this, that kind of thing. But, eventually, I think that with everything that's happening, people will be waking up more and more.
Yeah, I mean, that can only be what takes place, because we are definitely in our own little reset moment.
Yeah, we definitely are. And the horrible things that are happening, although it's horrible, it kind of nudges people to understand things, to really understand where we're at, the phase that we're at right now. Back in 2007, my awakening, I was a bit too early. But now, all these songs that I've repurposed, they're all songs that I wrote back then,
And who knew?
Who knew?
That they would be so relevant.
Yeah.
It's like you wrote them now.
Yeah.
With what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, what's been taking place is that they thought that they could pull one over on the American public, and the American public is like, no, not yet. We're not that far gone.
Yeah.
I mean,
some of them are the ones that are, all about Trump and all about the God of the Bible, and they refuse to get it because they're so deep in the weeds, they're so programmed.
But I think there's more that don't want that type of world than those that do.
Well, what we're seeing now, like, wait a minute, people are being executed in the street, and then we're being gaslit and lied to, bold-faced lied to.
Yeah.
It's like, I know what I saw.
It's like
you don't have to tell me what I saw.
You put Christy Nome or Greg Bavino's account of what happened to Alex Peretti into the video showing what actually happened to him, and you could just see the lies unfold. It's like, okay, yeah, he was brandishing a firearm. No,
it was a phone recording.
He was literally following the ICE agents and trying to provoke them with a weapon. No. It's like the guy was literally trying to protect a woman that a guy had shoved down, and almost like if she would have hit a pole or something, could have cracked her head.
And then those that have been wanting the Second Amendment rights, they're now all of a sudden they're like, well, you shouldn't have been carrying a weapon to a protest. And if you're not going to carry a weapon to a protest to defend yourself, against the tyranny of the government, then when are you going to carry a weapon?
And my question to them is Kyle Rittenhouse in his AR-15 and shooting 2 people. I mean, he carried a weapon. He wasn't even allowed to.
He was underage. I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's just like, but this mess up has really opened the eyes that you got a bunch of people that are normally pro-Trump are questioning now. What's his name? The guy from Texas who's like, oh, I don't know, Mr. Trump. I think Ted.
Oh, Ted Cruz.
Yeah. I mean, when you have Ted Cruz going against what Trump, that kind of tells you, okay. And a lot of Republicans are going, no, we're not. This is where we get off this train.
But it's so obvious that the federal government wasn't really looking to enforce any immigration laws at all. It was looking to extort a state that has voting records that they want.
Yeah.
That they want to control the midterms so badly that they're willing to kill people in a state in order to do it. And that is when you realize that you're living in a tyrannical government.
Oh, totally. That's why, like, all the stuff that we are stating, it's not new. It's not new. It's stuff that's what they've done. These managers, have been doing, because that's all they are. They're managers of this old bloodline, some sort of like, what I'm still trying to understand is why they tried killing off the giants. What, who are these other bloodlines that are using us as Lush as to create this new world that they've been creating? And why did they decide to get rid of the giants?
Or did the giants really go away at all? And is it just a cover story?
Yeah.
The giants.
They might be in them.
They may
be in the Arctic somewhere, hiding. And lots of questions, lots of questions. But it's important to ask questions, folks. Don't just take the narrative, because obviously we see that the narratives that they give us is BS.
Yeah.
They're lying. They've been lying to us about everything. Everything you think you knew, question it again, because it's all lies. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, either leave them in the comment. We also, if anybody wants to call in, that is the number 602-456-9760. Let me make sure that this is on. Yeah. So if you have any questions, and
Mark is so jonesing for a phone call. He's been begging.
I haven't been posting the number. Yeah, the old days when when people would call in and engage, and it's been so long ago. I feel so old.
We are old.
61 years old.
Yeah.
Jeez, and you seem to be 50.
No.
Yeah.
I'm getting older.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. Well, anyway, I don't think anyone's going to call in. So, no. But if you're enjoying...
Oh, wait, no. The lines are so busy.
Oh, yeah.
You can't get a phone call. They're like
congested. Well, even, I know we don't get a lot of views, but if we're able to help just one person or a couple of people, to wake up, to realize the kind of world that we're living in, and that it's important to really tap into your energy, that field that we all possess and can really alter and change things if we tap into that, meditate, listen to, what is it,
432 hertz.
432 hertz. And there are all sorts of different meditation hertz that help you get rid of anxiety, help you heal, all sorts of stuff, because they've really done a number on us. That's why we're so filled with pain and all sorts of disorders, because we're not tapped into our typical resonance.
Yeah, the power of the electric energy grid that we've been disconnected from since, you're a medical professional, the heart is...
That's why your EKG, your heart is electricity. Everything in your body, your cells operate on that. When you're trying to heal, like as an occupational therapist, I use things like E-stem or TENS unit, and that works with the electricity of your own body, meditation, breathing, really tapping in. We are so disconnected from all of that and all these artificial lights and artificial technology, make it worse, So take time to go outside, breathe the air, hug a tree, listen to birds, breathe the air,
For sure.
For sure. Walk. Yeah. All right, guys. Hope you guys, stay safe in this unpredictable world. But I have a feeling that in the long run, everything will be as it should be. And we will be okay as we have been throughout history. So we thank you guys for tuning in, and catch us Thursday, 6:30 p.m. We love you guys. But remember to always love yourselves too. Good night. Be well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, yeah. I am me. You are you. Different streets and avenues. Which are the crossroads you will choose? It doesn't matter where we are going. It doesn't matter where we've been. It's all a journey, the destination will soon begin. Red or white, dark or bright, seasons change all the time. Those are the memories we left behind. Doesn't matter where we are going. It doesn't matter where we've been. It's all a journey, the destination will soon begin. Get your straight. Now or wait. Fight this war. These are the choices life presents. It doesn't matter where we are going. It doesn't matter where we've been. It's all a journey, the destination will soon begin. Will soon begin. It doesn't matter where we are going. It doesn't matter where we've been. It's all a journey, the destination will soon begin. Wrong or right, can't decide. It's not our say, it's not our fight. The real solution is to unite. It doesn't matter where we are going. It doesn't matter where we've been. It's all a journey, the destination will soon begin. Will soon begin. Na, na, na. I am you are me. Different streets and avenues. Which are the crossroads will you choose?